At the door, or just
Well, I can.
one of your listings or something. Hey, the house.
Like, am I in Georgia? I've been trying to watch.
I just,
And I hear it in there, and it's like, I click on it, but I don't know how to type my name on it. Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah. And she was like, well, yeah, I just want to talk to you. Like, I said, yeah, and you got a little county, you got that, and you know, you're like an organization, like you're children of maybe I just on my computer.
these are all, that's a problem. I get it. The other one, different thing.
Well, she made a comment that. So she.
They didn't want to go. They would do that. That's what I'm afraid of. The virus is so big that the agent will actually kind of have an everything else. You're free to get in. Yeah. And I don't get like or whatever. They said like all the virus this.
We just kind of like. Yeah. We need to have a walk. Chuck is inside. I think they're already tired of hearing.
Anything you need. Hey, guys.
And
Yes. Yeah. Probably just take over.
I'll have him go.
Good. Yep. Moving. All right, guys. You're gonna get started a little early. We usually have a little bit of some. What we start late a lot of times, 5 minutes or so, but today we are gonna rock and roll early. We have one of those days that is busy. We have incredible speakers today. One of them might be in a pink shirt, looking good in the back. Yeah, we got a really good meeting today, so we are gonna get kicked off real quick. If you have not, we have food in the back, presented by our friends. And they went all out. We got some subs, we got some chips, we've got stuff back there. Oh, we got Tia back there too. Look at that. I knew that she was invited, but there she is.
I like that.
And, I already, I went to her right. So, all right, guys, we are going to kick off right away. Mark and the pillar title 3, you want to come on up? I don't know if you're inviting everybody up. Actually, they're going to talk to you. I'm going to look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, why?
Morning. I've invited Clyde up here to talk about some things that, hey, how is everybody doing today? So I've invited Clyde Wagner and Lisa Capewood to talk about some things that I don't even know about. I'm going to listen and learn about some changes coming with CD and new changes. Lender changes. So, and I'm just going to turn it over to Clyde. Thanks.
Good morning. Well, you guys have been through some incredible changes here recently, and just want to let you know you're not alone. There's a lot of stuff going on in all parts of the real estate industry. The thing I'm here to just, I guess, educate you a little bit on something that's happening in 2 different fields. One is, I'm sorry, Mark, but at the end, this may benefit you. There's a lender, UWM, who has kind of started their own program and is pushing their loan officers to use their title work, their internal title work. And I'm just here to talk to you about that. I'm not pushing it. I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just kind of giving you a forewarning of what it means when it gets used, because as realtors, it can have a large impact on your buyer and your process. The second thing we'll talk about briefly is contract for deeds. And some of you are involved with contract for deeds. They're with the lending environment and things, it's become a little bit more aggressive with contract for deeds and how they work. And our government decided they were going to get involved for the right reasons, but in a lot of ways we overstep, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and there are unintended consequences. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on either. I'm not an attorney. I'm here just kind of telling you what's going on in the industry to advise you. If you want more information, Mark or Lisa or myself are certainly available to you and would love to have a conversation to help out. The first thing is with UWM's title operation. What they're doing is they're offering their clients a slight rate improvement if they will use their title company. And those are kind of things that we've dealt with in the past with captives. This one's a little different yet. This one, they're coming up with creative ways to save your client, home buyer, some money, or allegedly do it that way. And so what they're doing is they're getting an attorney's opinion letter, and they're making a loan decision based on that and that alone. You do not get a lender's policy. They do not require a lender's policy if you're going through their company. Now, that's where they're telling you you're saving money. They're not going to have to pay for a lender's policy. If you want an owner's policy for your client, you have to proactively go above and beyond, let them know that you want your customer to be covered with an owner's policy, and then fees are added on for that. That's an additional fee to what they're charging. Now, so that you know, when you have a lender's policy and an owner's policy, there's a simultaneous quote on that. And you end up paying it, when you get the both of them, it's maybe on average around $200 for the above and beyond. If you get one of them, hypothetically, it's $700. When you buy them both, it's $900. Everyone knows it varies on the size of the loan, but ultimately the owner's policy is only about on average $200 more than the lender's policy. So if you buy the owner's policy, you're saving $200 maybe on the whole process. So either way, if you're doing the right thing, or if your customer's doing the right thing and buying the owner's policy, they're really not saving a whole lot of money going through this program. There's a lot of question marks that I think no one knows because it's fairly new, but the two companies that are representing them and how they're getting deals closed are a national out of Kansas and a national out of Florida. I don't think either one of them understand Torrens, because no one understands Torrens except folks here in Minnesota. And we have a deal right now, and I guess this is what really brought this to our attention. We've known about this for a while, but we had a deal come up just this last week where it was one of your coworkers, or it was a Keller Roseville realtor, where they placed the order. They sold the house, placed the order through Pillar. We did all our work. Their loan officer that was working on it was going through UWM. UWM didn't ask any questions. They automatically ran it through their own title. They automatically did all of their own due diligence. And then when we get ready for closing on, which was supposed to be yesterday at 8:30, we didn't know they were even involved. They hadn't contacted anybody. They didn't talk to the realtor to tell them what was going on. They didn't talk to the seller side. They still don't have seller side documents from TitleSmart. TitleSmart's refusing to sign their customer twice. It's created just the lack of communication in the whole process. It has put the whole closing way behind. And we're hoping, we're going to be out of it more than likely, but we're hoping the deal gets closed by Friday at this point. There's a lot of angst over the whole thing, and it's all over a lack of communication. And again, I bring it to you because that loan officer went out on their own and just did their own thing. without communicating it to anyone else. That loan officer didn't, I mean, UWM didn't know they were supposed to get seller side docs. They didn't know. They didn't know they were supposed to do some of the preparation work. They don't have payoffs. None of that they currently have. So for your own benefit, there's nothing wrong with UWM. They're good company. They have their place. Lake area has their place. But I just want you to know that if your client is using a UWM lender, it's important that you be very proactive and telling them what you want to do. If you want to go with that, that's fine. I don't recommend it. I mean, we have questions like torrents. If you have an issue with your seller or buyer, and we have to go get a proceeding subsequent through the torrents department, I don't think some company out of Florida knows how to get that done in Minnesota. Certainly not timely. If you have an assessment that shows up at the table, didn't get the gutters fixed or didn't get the gutters put on, and all of a sudden now we're going to want to do an escrow at the table. I don't know how easy that is to do. You're doing a run and your title company is down in Florida or Kansas, and their ability to be flexible. So your local relationships that you have, whether they be with Nation or with not with Nations, but with Pillar Title and anyone else you may be using, are critical when it gets to closing. Be flexible to work through things. And I don't see that happening when you're working with a national like that set up to do. Yes, ma'am.
When you talk about UWM, you know, that means various lenders at UWM.
She's saying, who exactly is UWM? UWM is a national wholesaler. So broker offices throughout our metro area, that's one of the wholesalers they go to get their deals done. So the other thing, in their own documentation, it says only about 50% of the deals that they do would even qualify for this program. So it's a hit and miss thing to begin with. And the consistency, I would think, would be, I would avoid the inconsistency. Yes, ma'am.
No, that we have.
Well, in this particular case, they didn't. It depends on how you operate and how involved you are as a realtor. If you are helping network them with a loan, then you're obviously going to know, or you bring it up to your own loan officer that you work with. If you don't know, I would make it a part of your conversation when you're signing up with your buyer to represent them. Who are you pre-approved with? If it's UWM, or if it's a broker that's already done it that's going to be going through UWM, I would just proactively say, I prefer not to use their track program, is what they call it, TRAC. I don't want to use their track program. I'd like to use Pillar Title. Whoever you may choose. Any other question?
UWM, that's United Sale Mortgage, correct?
Correct, United Wholesale Mortgage.
And as a broker, if you're using that, you're working with the lender, is brokering a loan.
Correct.
To United Wholesale.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, the people that use UWM are local brokers. We're brokering their loans to UWM, and they're selling on the market. Anything else? I do have contract for deed, unless do you want to talk more about that? The contract for deed situation, we've had some unfortunate things nationally, and it's been very prevalent locally, specifically as stated in the Somali community, where a seller is selling to a person, and I'm not even going to say it's a Somalian or any other ethnicity, because this could happen to anybody. Unfortunately, they've been targeting the Somali community and some of the emerging markets, but they could sell to anybody. So this investor seller is selling to a buyer on a contract for deed. The investor seller, whatever reason, this is his business, And he intends or does, really intends on that contract for deed to not go through. He would love to take their $20,000 down payment to get into the house. He'd probably love to take the first year's payments. And then on a contract for deed prior to this, you could literally, if they were 30 days late, you could send them a late notice. And at the end of 60 days, if they hadn't cured it, you could literally take their house back. So in those situations, you had investor sellers walking away with $20,000 plus 1 year's of payments or whatever the time frame was. And that's literally how they were making their money. They were, in the emerging markets or again, anywhere else. People are giving their life savings or what they've been saving up just to get into the house for a down payment. And then you've got a bad actor seller trying to take advantage of them, who again, fully intends on taking back that property.
It's happening in Lakeville.
I'm sorry?
The thing that's happening in Lakeville.
No. They're trying to establish, purchase their 40 acres. So in an effort to stop the bad actors, I mean, there's plenty of good contract for deeds, but they were finding in these contract for deeds that they would have them set up for a 5-year term and the balloon payment was never disclosed. So the buyer never knew they were going to have to pay $200,000 at the end of 5 years or refinance to pay that off just to get into that property. So that there's just a myriad of situations where a contract for deeds can go bad. And from a predatory standpoint, it was happening frequently to unfortunate people. So the government got involved, as they will to do, and they decided they're going to completely rewrite the contract for deed laws. And they've changed a lot of the things for the good. I mean, there are some things in here that definitely have been done properly. They implemented this August 1st. They're going to be revising all the documents soon. I don't know why we can't get revised documents before implementation, but that would make way too much sense. In this situation, we're still expecting documents. The new language in the new documents is supposed to cover a lot of these things in the new law, but one of them is the foreclosure process. In the old days, again, you could get foreclosed, lose the house in 60 days. They're going to move that out to 90 days or a full foreclosure situation, depending upon how the contract for deed was written and the situation behind the parties. So that's a good thing. I mean, give some people a break, give them a chance to recover, give them a chance to rectify. If I'm selling my house to Mark on a contract for deed, and I've got a loan with US Bank, in today's world, or what it used to be, Mark would just go ahead and buy it. We'd keep making payments on my US Bank, and all is good until it came time to refi or if Mark wanted to buy me out. In the new world, the US Bank loan needs to be reviewed. If there's a due on sale clause in that or any language within that, you have to get written approval from US Bank before that loan can be closed. Otherwise, what was happening in some situations is US Bank was finding out about the sale, US Bank was calling it due on the due on sale clause, and then all of a sudden, Mark have to come up with an immediate refinance to pay it off. He was going to lose the house, and so would I, if I didn't pay it off. So this rectifies that situation, which adds paperwork to the process. You don't write up a contract for deed now and close it in 2 days. So there's going to take some time to do that research and get the documentation prepared for everyone's protection. So that's another big change on the origination side. There's also a 10-day rescission period on a contract for deed now. So when you write the contract for deed on the 1st, you can't close till the 10th or after. Both parties have the right now to review that documentation and decide whether they want to proceed with it. So if you as a realtor are looking at that and there's down payment money involved, down payment money on the loan, I would reconsider if you're gonna give them the whole 10, or I'll give you 1,000 to hold it, getting into the transaction, I'll give you the other 9 once we consummate this and close. I mean, there's just protections you need to consider as you're going through this, because they can back out in the first 10 days. So there's, are there? Trying to think if there's anything, there's a lot of things that have changed. I won't even bore you with the collection side of it. There's a tremendous number of things. In the old rules, if Mark bought the property and he wanted to deed that over to his daughter, he would not be allowed to do that. In the new rules, he's allowed to deed that property over to any family member or someone that might be an heir and take care of that property. So there's a lot of stuff to consider when you're doing those. The biggest thing is just make sure all the documentation is complete. And we've seen a lot of great ones, so it's the bad actors or it's the people that are trying to be deceptive that leave out the balloon payment, or they leave out some of the terms of the contract and how it's gonna be handled, or just do shoddy work trying to get through it real quick and not do a complete package. You don't necessarily have to have an attorney to do this stuff. You're welcome to use one. I'm sure they know what they're doing. We see them a lot too, so we're happy to take a look at them. I just want you to be careful when you're getting into that you are doing the best thing for your client.
What about ones that are written right now, that just say the changes are retroactive to August 1st?
Yes.
It hasn't closed yet.
Anything closing after August 1st is subject to these new rules. And here's one caveat I should have started with. If I'm a seller and I've lived in that property for more than a year, lived in, owner occupied, these rules are exempt because I'm not considered a professional investor. This is for the bad actors that are investor people out there trying to do deceptive things proactively for people. If you've got your mom and dad trying to sell to your next door neighbor, and then a lot of this goes out the window. I'm not going to say what it is because nothing's been finalized yet. I'm not an attorney, but I would certainly, some of the things that I've talked about, the 10-day rescission, I would still comply with. You know, a lot of the things that are easy to comply with, I would still be honoring those types of things. Any questions on contracts? Both of these are things I just thought it's good awareness for you guys. Starting to see more of it. We may see even more, so wanted to bring you aware.
Clyde, thank you so much. Right now, there are so many changes and so many things that are happening around us that are going to impact the experience of buyers and sellers and potentially impact their financials if they're not paying attention. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we give it up for Clyde with Pillar Title? Lisa. Amen. Thank you. All right, guys, I'm going to invite some friends of mine up here really quick. Anna and Joshua Baker. Come on down. So as they're coming up, one of my favorite things about you don't have to, you don't want to. If you fall off, everybody will laugh. I won't. What I like about what I really appreciate about Josh and Honest Business is one, how you've surrounded your sphere of influence, your group of people, the people that you hang out with, the people you play sports with, the people that you're training with, have become a part of what you're doing, right? So reaching out to people in your world and giving them the opportunity, or an opportunity, right? It could be an opportunity to buy, it could be an opportunity to sell. It could be an opportunity to stage. It could be an opportunity to get into real estate. So just tell us a little bit about you guys. Why are you in real estate? Why do you love it? Why do you do it every day?
So, well, I don't think
It's okay, you can use it, I swear, it's only for those online.
Okay.
So, yeah, in here, it's a weird thing, Marty's not here, so blame Marty. Marty?
Just. I feel like that's from you.
Well, I think for me, the reason why I chose real estate was my father's been doing it for over 45 years, owned his own brokerage in California. I had a coach of mine one time ask me, well, if your bloodline's in real estate, why wouldn't you just jump into that, trying to become a coach in basketball, whatever. And I kind of took that to heart, and I was like, I think you're right, I'm gonna give it a shot. And I think for me, my dad sacrificed a ton to build his empire. And I just wanted to prove either to myself or to him that, I could do the same numbers that you do or get kind of close, hopefully, and still be present in my kids' lives and provide for my family, and just, if I could help out in my communities, whether that was friends, or whoever it might be. I just jumped at the opportunity, and I just remember taking my test, and I know it was like a 2.5 hour, or 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I was done with that exam in like 45 minutes. And I'm like, I think I passed. So, it's just something I jumped right into, and then, you talked about me playing sports. So a lot of times you hear these cliches like, no person can serve two masters. Well, I was working a serving job doing real estate, and I felt like I was doing my clients a disservice by focusing on another job and not jumping fully into real estate. Well, it happened to be that I got my finger busted twice in 4 weeks, and it kept me out of serving because I couldn't hold a trade. And it just forced me into real estate, and I just never looked back. I knew that that's where I was going to be from here on out. I don't think about anything else.
So awesome. I know I appreciate that, and I can feel that from the experience I have when I'm with you and I'm with other people around you. So let's shift a little bit to you guys. Your team. Work together, you live together, you raise kids together.
Well, I guess this kind of speaks, like, I ran into real estate on accident because I was just helping him study. I used to be an elementary school teacher. We moved to Texas. They didn't take the Minnesota license. So I was like, fine, I'll do it too. Like, I know all this information, ran into it, ended up pregnant. And then I was like, well, I better start this business. You go get you go work a 9 to 5 while I start real estate. And that's how I got roped into it. I do feel like I have, there's a lot about real estate that I love, but I'm a super passive Minnesotan. I'm not gonna door knock. I'm not gonna cold call. I'm allergic to it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I post on social media, just like, here's the life of me. And I think that what Josh and I do to promote our business is just kind of like what comes natural. He's super social. We'll talk to everybody in line at Target. He's doing his leagues. Everybody knows his name. And he's got the kind of charismatic personality where he's going to be like, gonna sell a house with me, aren't you? And it's like funny and people love it. Where I'm like, you don't have to. You don't have to. Okay. Don't worry about it. Exactly. So we've kind of learned to balance that way where it's like, okay, Josh, you go out and get the business. Unless it comes through like a family member or sphere from me. And I'm like, and then I'll do the contracts because that's kind of where I'm better at explaining things from that teacher mindset of let's talk big umbrella, let's talk details. And I'm just better kind of behind the scenes doing the paperwork. And then I have this creative, I like to be creative and very visual. And so it was a couple years that we were in real estate when one of my friends who owned a staging company was like, oh, I just need somebody 10, 15 hours a week. And I was like, oh, I'll do that. Like, that'd be fun. Josh has got it. Like I can help out. And it went from me just like showing up to help her stage and sending out some invoices for her. Now I'm like 30 hours a week as her operations and assistant designer. And we're doing Freda Homes and Artisan Home Tour. And we did a season for HGTV. And it's so much fun because it's a creative outlet for me. And then I get to transfer that over to our clients where all of these services that I've learned in staging, like consultation, styling, and staging installations, I'm able to bring that knowledge to our clients to say, let me give you the professional experience of listing your home. Let me bring that value. So if you actually hop back a slide. But yeah, so I kind of like, Josh and I have in our business, there we go. Josh and I in our business have realized kind of, we used to work on transactions kind of together, and it got a little mucky where it was like, wait, the other agent said what to you? Or did you do that paperwork? Or did this happen? And so we've kind of started to play volley. So if it's a listing, I'll start with the prep and then I'll kind of pass the baton to him so that like one of us is point versus trying to blend together on a transaction. It just gets really messy and I think the other agent gets really annoyed with us. So kind of the staging, because it's on our list to talk about today. I think what I've learned through my career in the industry is that we can bring as listing agents a differentiation from all these other agents by bringing expertise and value through preparation. It's not just, oh, I'll take photos, post the sign and post it on the MLS. It's let me prepare you so that your listing stands out above all else. And I have the eye for it, so I like do it for our own clients, but to bring in a professional who can say, look, let's pick this light out. It's $200 on Amazon. It's going to totally reinvent your dining room. Let's switch out the handles on your cabinets. It's going to reduce the age of your kitchen by a decade. These are little things that our sellers can do that hugely impact how the buyers are going to experience the home when they walk through it. Having things organized, paint on the wall is something that goes super far when it comes to the buyer's experience. And then how do we organize furniture? This is like a picture of a you know, a little half story, but looking if this was a naked photo, it would look small. With furniture, and this is their furniture, stage furniture, we're creating this, like, wow, there is a lot of room in that listing photo. I can see how I can grow into this home. And so the things that we can bring to our clients, these skills, whether you have the skill or, you know, a stager who has the skill, are ways that we can really move the needle for our listings. So, yeah. And then going on to the next slide, it's just kind of like what we do in our listings. It's about like buyers remember how a place makes them feel. We might be, you know, it might be like, oh, it has 3 bedrooms and a garage and this, but a lot of homes have that. So how do we make a listing that evokes a feeling to make buyers say, oh, I love this, or oh my gosh, how cute. Oh, I love it here. It feels so good. And that's something that staging items can really change how a buyer feels when they walk through the front door. And then the last slide is just why stage. And some of the things, you know, I really like to point out the bottom one here is money. Staging is usually less than a price reduction if you have a listing that's sitting. And again, it'd be like as an agent to say, I'm going to put an actionable in front of you. Here's something that I think is more affordable than maybe dropping the price 10 grand, because staging likely is not going to cost 10 grand. Say, hey, let's reinvent this listing. Let's show buyers how to use the space. Let's evoke those emotions. This home. Let's give them the best floor plan for this, you know, 1920 living room that's super long and there's nowhere to put a TV. Let's show them where the TV goes. Let's show them how the couch goes. And then just use too, especially in Minnesota. Like, let's get some furniture on those front porches and make that usable square footage. So I think how we prep our listings and the value that we bring as agents can really set us apart from the competition out there.
So from a teamwork side of things.
Yeah, sorry.
We work very, very well, like honestly, independently, usually letting one person take point. It's great because, you know, if I forget something in an inspection, or I forget to mention something, Anna's in the background, or it's me, you know, and like, hey, did you think of this, or did you think of that? So the dynamic of the team, it's phenomenal. Like Anna is our admin guru, and thank goodness for Shannon, because that dude, he's a champion what he does. So just having that kind of team set up, man, it just makes things so much easier. Obviously, with Lynn checking all of our paperwork, because Lord knows I'll submit late later than she likes, or you know if I forget something, like hey, you know we're humans, we forget things, but the team works very very well. So yeah.
You say that, I mean, it seems like you both help each other very well. It's very, you can hear that you guys are also very forthright with what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Working in a million teams, it's tough and nice when you're not acknowledging strengths and weaknesses and being honest about what's not working and what is working.
Absolutely. As much as she'll say that I'm outgoing and like I'll talk to anybody, this, what you just got, was exactly why I love having her on the team, because she's very articulate. Where I'm like, I'm not really sure if I understood what you meant by that. You know, like, but she does a great job of explaining these things for our clients. And a lot of times, like you guys know that we're the elder services, and so that's our niche. And sometimes you just got to slow down. Somebody once told us that we talk a little too fast. So, you know, I get that. And so we worked on that, right? It's just a process to make sure that, okay, well, that's constructive feedback. So we need to make sure that we're not both coming at our clients and talking to them, or that, you know, the, hey, like asking that clarifying questions. What else can I do for you? Or what do you need? Or did you understand this?
How did you still look back?
Well, Karen Collins, our hero, I was in Ignite, and I think she kind of like sensed my personality a little bit, and she was like, I think you'd be really great with Annie and Becky and the team, and I convinced Annie and Becky to kind of like open up and meet us, and it's, you know, that's history. You know, we hit it off with Annie and Becky, and I think working with the elderly and seniors who are transitioning, it hits in a different way that you're like really, really helping people and going above and beyond, doing all these extra steps for them is so impactful in their experience, because a lot of our clients like really can't physically or mentally take on this load. And so to take that for them is very gratifying. And so I think that's why we're in it for the long
Yeah,
haul.
I think it's a little bit of like altruism too. Like it's just like, I'm gonna be there someday, and I don't know what's gonna change. Like, did they have any idea that we were gonna be as technologically advanced as we are today? I'm gonna want somebody to take care of me. You know, and I'm gonna want somebody to listen to my story. And that's the beauty of it, is like when you sit down and you like your listing appointment, I don't know, how long would you say it takes for us? 45 minutes, hour maybe? We'll sit down with our clients. I've tried the time. I sat down with one client for 3 hours, and we talk stories, like horror stories. And it's such an incredible experience. So like falling into it was just meant to be. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is fun.
That's probably one of the things too I see different. I don't see Anna as much, but I see Josh, and you're always smiling, man. You're always positive. You even run into some things where, you know, maybe positivity wasn't the first reaction, but you always are. And so I think that leads me to this question of, you do most of the lead generation consistently. What do you do to lead generate right now?
So really, like, okay, so we just had this tournament for flag football as an example. I didn't know I was even gonna go. I don't think any of the guys expected me to go or to show up, but I just brought out waters and Gatorades, and I wasn't planning on having many conversations. I wanted to say what up to everybody, say what up to my guy Thomas. This is a beast out there. But you know, it turned into having like 8 different conversations about real estate that day. You know, and so for me, it's more about like okay, I'm canvassing my businesses, great. I can get that done in a few hours in a day, maybe if I'm doing it once a week. But then like when it comes to football, when it comes to softball, when it comes to hockey, I'm sponsoring leagues, I'm making sure that everything is, in order for the Department of Commerce. And I'm just having conversations, like Anna said, it didn't matter, you could be standing next to Target, and I'm sorry, you're gonna get conversation from a random stranger. I tag all of my gear, like my shirt is tagged on the back, and I've had people just walk up to me like, I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm a baker, but not the baker you think I am. So, and it just creates conversation. And for me, it was, that's what I do to try to get people talking, I guess. So.
You do a really great job with it. Your energy is there, but.
Yeah, and I think, he plays at a dome and there's 4 fields going, and if you look at it, you go to a game one night, it's like at least one team on every field has our logo on their jersey. He's giving out pies, he's got the hats. I mean, and they're cute hats, so people are like, and we don't charge for them. We just like hand them out, and people like them. So.
That is awesome, you guys. All right, so we're looking at one of the biggest changes in our business, right? The last couple of months have been kind of the same. The last couple of years have felt really different. Did you guys start to look at the market as you move forward? Is there any changes to your approach or anything you're doubling down on that the agency here could use?
Yeah, I think one thing that we've began to implement is like printable material that's like a deliverable to the client. So we've always gone into listing and buyer presentations with some sort of, like, here's the process to buy. And in the past couple months, I've really leaned in and worked on that guide. I call them guides. Seller's guide, a buyer's guide. I try to put a lot of visuals in there. I give them tips, preparing them. I have a whole page in there about how to be competitive if you're a buyer. What are the things that you can do to be competitive if we're in a multiple offer situation? Because some of it just kind of takes time to think about, like, do I want to pull from my 401k? How much is it going to cost me to buy? What's the process? What's an appraisal gap? So laying kind of this information out in front of them to get them thinking about it, so that, like, in the moment, 8 p.m., we're writing an offer and I'm like, I gotta know if you're gonna cover the appraisal gap. They're not like, what?
Yeah.
So a lot of that education up front is, I think, where we're gonna lean into with the changes. So adjusting those guides to show, hey, sellers, you've always had these options, but here's how they're laid out a little bit more clearly, because there's more discussion about them now and whatnot. So.
Do you know on the 3 pre-real estate jobs that are the most successful in real estate? You were on the phone with them.
Tell me.
Nurses?
Okay.
Chaos, right? Bartenders, chaos. Teachers, chaos. And you can tell the way that you deliver is very thoughtful, because sometimes we do forget the fact that people that we're doing business with, regardless of their age, do this every day.
Sure.
And so because they don't, taking a very specific approach to helping them understand what they're going to do before they have to make that decision absolutely distinguishes you, because they're so used to getting, I don't know what this is since I'm here. And then the last minute they go, should we be writing in the appraisal gap? Should we be, they don't know. So the fact that you're out in front of it is just more proof that my anecdotal story of the professions works.
It works. And we've been bartenders and we've been teachers.
Yeah, right.
The stress pays off. You just learn how to go through the stress.
Do twins help the stress?
Oh, twins help. Yeah, 4-year-old twins help.
Oh, that's fun too.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing too, with the changes that are coming up, right, and I might be kind of hypocritical in all of this, but the last meeting I came to, Morris shared kind of the breakdown of like how he talks to his clients, and I thought it was so amazing, because we had it in our presentation, but just not quite how Morris had it broken down. And it, like making sure that you're attending these office meetings, or you're listening to Greg Hartos, when he's on a Zoom. Like I really try to get to those things. And, because I don't want to be calling him at 5 o'clock on a Friday, saying, can you walk me through this, right? So like, we're, having to bug him about it either, but I'm finding a lot of value in just the last couple of meetings that I've come to be able to guide my clients through the newer changes. So.
Guys, I want you to help me thank the Bakers for being here. I really appreciate the amount of love. I appreciate the amount of love that our agents pour in. A lot of the agents in this room continually, week after week, pour into each other. They pour into the market center. They're pouring into their clients, and guys are just in. So thankful for them, and so thankful to be in business with them. Guys, we're going to jump right in. What do we got to do?
Okay. Anyone who was here mostly-ish on time, do you want to pay really quick for your?
All right, so he's going to do that.
Quick procedure on here mostly-ish on time, and it'll pass. Mostly it. It'll pass it around one after this, and we'll do one right after class, so we should do that. So for the laser measure.
Somebody get the laser measure right now. The kitchen is entirely finished, so. All right, guys. The one that you've all been waiting for, as we continue to get information about what this is. Greg's class last week in Maple Grove had about 150 or plus people that attended, participated, between being in person and online. This is why we are different. I really appreciate the relationship we have with Greg Hartos and with Lynn Arbroder here. Was Greg as an addition to that, but they've been ahead of this the whole time. They're constantly digging into what's going on. They're constantly trying to research how our agents can remain ahead of this. You guys, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Greg Hartos to the stage.
Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. Anyway, I always appreciate coming over to Roseville and having the opportunity to meet with you guys. And Lynn and I talk all the time, so Lynn is a great resource for you, but she's a great resource for me. Because sometimes I wonder, am I thinking this through right? And so we do talk a lot about issues and concerns and moving together. I do have a couple of unique arrows in my pack, in that I am on our MLS Board of Governors, and I'm also on the Minnesota Association of Realtors Executive Committee and Board of Directors. So I've kind of seen some of the stuff that's been going on and the changes that have been made from a little bit different view than most people. And so just here to share with you. If you have questions, love questions, if it's pertinent to what we're on, I will stay around and answer questions, and Lynn is also able to do that, because I want to be respectful of your time, or Emmy or whoever. Yeah, when I start getting close, start pacing the room, looking at your watch and doing this. Maybe I'll get the drift, maybe I won't. Anyway, so we're going to talk about what we've seen in the marketplace since these changes have really kicked in, starting on August 1st with the forms changes. And then August 15th, I think, is when they took the commissions off the MLS. Is that right, Lynn? That was a couple of days early. I get that. The MLS had to make sure by the 17th they were down all fields, and the only way to do that is actually have it happen on MLS. So I know that was a little bit of a surprise to us when that happened early. That's okay. And then on the 17th, when the terms of the lawsuit settlement really kicked in, and that's when we need to start obeying the rules, right? And I'm hoping that everybody at every brokerage obeys the rules. I am not naive enough to believe that that is going to happen. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that process. I am teaching you the way the forms read, settlement reads, and how we need to react. There are other agents, there are other brokers out there maybe training their agents some way else. We're not training them at all. Keep in mind that probably 60% of the brokers had not spoken to their agents about changes coming up prior to August 1st. Now, why somebody would stay at that brokerage baffles me. I don't even care if they're paying you 120% of your commissions. If they're not educating you, you shouldn't invest your career there, right? So we want to make sure that we're up to date on stuff, and we will inform you if changes kick in. I hope that we all behave properly moving forward, and in a couple of months they say, you know, some of these restrictions really aren't working for the consumers. They really aren't working for the buyers. Realtors have all been good, nobody's speeding, nobody's driving through a stop sign. Let's loosen some of these up, help benefit the buyers in the transaction. Because those are the ones that are primarily affected by these changes. In Minnesota, we didn't have as many changes as in the rest of it. Can you imagine being in a state where they didn't have buyer representation? And now you gotta learn that and react to that. So Minnesota was one of about 14 states that had buyer representation. Minnesota had an extra step, and we had an agency disclosure, which I'm sure everybody has always signed on time. Okay. And so the adjustments here haven't been as great as the rest of the country. So we'll go to the next slide. Stay off the internet. Nothing good happens on the internet. There's a bunch of people with no ground to have an opinion or to make a statement, and they are giving you bad information. In fact, a lot of those knuckleheads that are on there are probably going to create the next lawsuit. And I hope it's for them personally, as opposed to all of us together. And I was on Code Agents or whatever, and every once in a while, I was like, I'm gonna weigh in and do something here and just make a nice comment, not pick on people, but just correct things. It is just so frustrating. There's so much of it happening. So just stay off of that. Listen to what Lynn says and you'll all be good. It's not even entertaining to watch, to listen to some of that stuff. And Inman, by the way, is not a friend of ours. Well, you'll all be happy to know that the Minnesota Association of Realtors has decided to end their subscription with Inman. So you won't be getting it for free, but you won't have to read that crap either. So, and you know, Inman is a source of news. And in fact, the attorneys that were suing us were using the live Inman polls and live Inman comments in their lawsuit. So stay off the internet. Next one, stop whining. There is nothing you can do to change what happened. And by the way, congratulations, we all lived through the change that happened on August 17th. There is nothing you can do to change what happened. And who should we blame? Well, we should blame sometimes ourselves, right? Not signing agency soon enough. You imagine there's 100,000 agency violations in the state of Minnesota in a given year? And I would guess there are. Right? That either means every agent did it 5 times, one agent did it 10 times, and you did it none. But, you know, so realtors in other states did not want to have buyer representation, did not want to have discussions with buyers, maybe didn't have real clear contracts for sellers. We need to blame ourselves. Don't blame NAR. NAR is you. Right? So stop whining. We need to move on. Right? History. Let's leave it behind us. Next one. Don't answer questions that you can't answer. Sometimes I'm in the Maple Grove Facebook group and I'm in yours. And sometimes somebody will ask a question and the wrong persons will jump in with an answer in their opinion without a full understanding of what's going on. It's not helpful because then you know, that person is misled. Everybody that reads the post after that is misled. And Lynn's got a mess to clean up. So if you don't know the answer and if you're not going to take time to give a full answer, then refer it to Lynn. I want to be helpful, but it's not helpful if somebody gets 5 different answers and goes, which one's right? I don't know. So no one needs to know your thoughts and opinion. They want facts and answers. Good with that? What is okay? Brokers can still offer commissions on their own listings via their own websites or other non-MLS channels. And I know I've seen some agents go, well, I'm going to put a sign rider out front. Fantastic. I'm going to leave a note on the counter. Fantastic. I'm going to leave the compensation, cooperating broker compensation agreement on the counter for a stack of them, just like I got a stack of seller disclosures. Awesome. I mean, look, isn't every agent and every buyer now going into a property knowing what the compensation is anyway? Why not have that broker, right? If you're listing, you have a stack of them there so that when I show the house, I no longer have to wonder what is the compensation if I didn't already know in advance. Now I've got the golden letter that guarantees me compensation on that agreement. So don't be afraid of those, right? You listed the house, seller knew your commission, they indicated what they wanted you to share. We're just making that available to everybody. T-fobs, I've seen those, and people are saying, are those legal? Yeah, in my opinion, they are. What is deemed to be treading in dangerous territory is when our brokerage, and meaning Keller Williams Roseville, would go together with other agents or other brokerages and find a website like Minnesota Commission, coopcommissions.com, and you can list all your commissions on there. We're not going to do that. Roseville will have, KW is developing something for Roseville and Maple Grove, where we can post our own commissions on our list. Some of our competitors are already doing that, and so we'll probably be moving in that direction. Any questions on that? You should hand out that cooperating broker compensation agreement like candy. You cannot have it on MLS. You cannot have it on showing time, it can be a supplement, but you can send it out to each that have shown your property, right? To let them know, hey, thanks for showing my house today. You have 35 questions, and here's the cooperating broker compensation agreement. Makes it simple. The listing broker should be the one originating. And I know it's a little frustrating now if you're out showing properties, right? And you call the agent, and they go, are you offering compensation? And they say yes, and they say how much, and they tell you, and you go, fantastic, can you send me something? They go, yeah, we don't do that one. Then it's like, well, how do I make sure that that offer is gonna be valid, right? I've got a phone conversation with you, I might have a text call with you, I might have an email from you, but none of those are signed by your broker, are they? So they mean nothing. So sometimes I find ourselves originating those, right? Filling it out. You told me this. Send it before you send the offer. Get it back before you send the offer, because here's what could happen. Well, I'll just make it convenient. I'll send my offer along with this agreement. Okay? Seller signs the offer and seller sends that back, and you never get this back. What do you get paid? I don't want you guys to be stung. So the listing broker should be producing those. Next one.
I'm gonna just jump in. So this morning, one of our agents had me do exactly that. The other agent said, fill it out, send it with the offer. It came back today. Their broker crossed off the commission, put in 0, and then signed it.
What did that mean, Lynn? Did that mean I got the number I put in or the number you put in?
The number the listing agent provided, the broker refused to sign it.
Well, then you better put it in the PAM lines. Everybody. Yeah. You should be able to champ these in your sleeve, 405 and 408. Okay? So don't try to get cute. Cannot add commission to supplements, agent comments, photos, secret code, list price, links, or any place else. Your MLS is going to allow it. And your broker's not going to allow it. Keep in mind that who was sued? Well, NAR was sued. A bunch of MLSs were sued. A bunch of franchises were sued. A bunch of brokerages were sued. And NAR ended up spending a little over $400 million for brokerages and agents where their volume was less than $2 billion a year back in 2020 or whatever it was. So the rest of our friends were covered by the NAR settlement. In the future, and I don't know if you've heard Gary say it, at the last event, weeks ago, and the one back in February, he made it clear, I wrote a check this time, it won't happen again. They will be going after individual agents, teams, groups, and brokerages that are not in compliance with the settlement terms. We intend to be a compliant brokerage, only teach the right things, only have expectations of you to do the right thing, and you'll get a talking to if you're not. If you intend to break the law, the rules, I would not stand up and say, I'm going to keep doing what I was doing anyway, and maybe convince 4 or 5 of you other guys to do it along with me, because you will be held responsible. Here's what, and we'll get into this in a minute. Go ahead, next slide. Co-op broker compensation agreement. It is the replacement for the MLS offer of compensation. Before, if something was on MLS and there was compensation offered, let's just use 3% as an example today. If you were the procuring cause and took that property to closing, that's what your broker deserved to get paid, not a penny less. The co-op broker compensation agreement is a replacement for the MLS sheet. It's originated by the listing broker. If you don't get a copy, we talked about that. Let's go on to the next one. Cooperating brokers, what do we have an obligation as to our competitors? And what are their obligations to us? Well, under state statute and the MLS rules as well, we have an obligation to be able to show properties. Right? Unless the property is in withheld status, in which case it's only the listing broker. Right? So we have the right to call up other brokers and they do as well to gain access to our property. There's no obligation to share any commissions at all. Offers of compensation can still be made. If there is no offer, your buyer wants to be compensated and you have an agreement saying they agree to have you compensated, you can request that in the PA online. Very good. And there's always been here in a variety of different business models: discount brokers, flat fee brokers, venue-driven brokers by pricing. So they've always been here. That will not change. There will be some people experimenting with different types of businesses. I get that, right? They may be successful. They may not. I don't think that this is a field that's going to get turned on its head because somebody came in with another good idea, because we've been doing that for the last 50 years, and especially with technology. So we have to live with our competitors and adjust to maybe how they do business and how we're going to work with them. But in some cases, we get to write the rules when they want to do business with us and sell our listings. Next one. Changes in the listing contract. Keep in mind, most of the listing contract is exactly the same as it was before, with minor language changes because it may be referred to be published in the MLS. They had to take some things out. The key thing that they added in, and I do not like the order that they put this in, and if you remember that the old listing contract said seller agrees to pay, commissions to the broker of a retainer fee, a percentage, or a dollar amount, whichever is greater, and then we put in the fixed commission to the brokerage in there. Okay. And then the other part in the agreement was the seller is authorizing the listing broker to offer compensation to a buyer broker of X%, and or a possibility of also sharing compensation with a non-represented buyer's agent, a facilitator. And that was in our agreement for the last couple of years. The new language they added immediately below our commissions is this: hey, if another broker comes in and asks the seller to directly compensate them, then I agree to have my above commission by X dollars or X%. I think you can put 0 in there. I don't want you to get stung. Hopefully most of you are listing properties still at a full commission and having a conversation with your seller about why you believe it's in your best interest to offer compensation to another broker. Been doing it going that way for the last 50 years. Sold millions and millions of homes. It's a proven method. Would you rather try a different method? That's fine, we can do that, but I believe you might have a longer market time. Yeah, you might have more difficulty attracting buyers. It might be more difficult for buyers to help consummate the transaction. And your sellers will take that decision forward. So I don't like you filling in anything right now in that. And again, we may need to react to it depending on a purchase agreement's written, but I don't want you to get anything less than what you bargained for when you took that list. Any questions on that? Seeing none, let's move on. Seller directions. If seller directs you to offer compensation to another broker on lines 129 to 135, must notify co-op brokers whether or not they ask of that specific offer of compensation. So I listed a house at 7. Seller said pay 3% to a buyer represented agent. The seller is telling me to advertise that, not keep that a secret and see what somebody calls up and asks. And I says, well, what is your buyer agreed for you to get compensated? You say, well, 2.5. And I said, well, magically that number's 2.5. No, I have an obligation to let you know it's 3%. And then we'll see how the deal shakes out. So I know there's some agents right now that are taking listings and their seller is directing them to offer compensation and they won't tell you how much. Then in my opinion, then are you telling me to put it into my purchase agreement? Yes. Then put the number that you and the buyer agreed to that. You've had some agents push back and say, well, and I'll give you an example. Agent wouldn't tell us how much compensation they were offering. And so in our purchase agreement, we put 3% in there because that's what the buyer agreed to. Seller gets the offer, seller likes the offer, the listing agent calls back. Now, keep in mind, they didn't counter, they called the buyer's agent, and said, hey, the 3%, that's a problem. I listed the house at 5, so I'm only gonna pay 2.5. It was like, is this a seller counter? Or is this a listing agent counter? Now, our agent unfortunately made the mistake of saying, that's okay. Right? The seller had, my deal would be, if your seller doesn't like our offer and they want to change it, have them change it. I do not believe the seller would have countered our offer. That was a listing agent driven deal because of what he took his commission at and what he planned on spending. And unfortunately for him in this set of circumstances, it was more than that. Now, my agent basically took a haircut, right? Oh, guys, but, I should talk, I guess. But my point was, then the agent went back to the buyer and said, guess what? You get to make up the shortfall. He cost his own client money. Now, the client would have said, well, you, Greg, said you'd be a little flexible in theory, then I would cut my money. And the other agent got rich. So make them formally counter you if they don't like what's in there. Do not, and again, I think good agents should charge more than average agents, don't you? I mean, when you go out for a steak, are you gonna pay more for a steak, at, what's the place up here, Lindy's? What's Lindy's? Than you would at, Perkins? I would hope so. I think good agents should charge more. So anyway, put your mission in there and make them formally counter it out if they don't like it. Because if it's the agent, that's their problem. Yes.
I just want clarification. So this guy took the listing at 5
Which we didn't know, none of our business.
because he.
He's cooperating, we didn't know until he tried to negotiate it out at the end.
Yeah, and so then the PA comes over and says 3, and he didn't want that because he'd only end up with 2. But is that actually the case? He'd only end up with 2? Doesn't his listing contract somehow protect him?
We didn't see his listing contract. Again, every other brokerage, right? I only care about 350 agents there and 200 agents here.
Well, like say it was me then. I took it for 5 and I was intending to pay out 2.5 and then it came over at 3.
What are you gonna do?
That
Turn
means
your
I only-
swearing, well, I screwed up in my.
But does that mean I only get 2 or does it?
Yes. I'm assuming that in his agreement, right, in his conversations with the seller, which we were not privy to, he dug himself a hole and didn't like the hole when he got in there when the offer came in. I mean, how can a seller say, I don't love that offer?
Back up a couple of
He
slides.
did what?
Is this the guy who comes up in the,
He ended up sharing too much after the fact. He shouldn't have known what he was doing.
At the beginning, you just said.
He wouldn't give us a number.
And then-
So our agent said, well, and I'm gonna put in what is my buyer rep agreement, right? I mean, if it would have been less, why wouldn't he still have put in 405, 408? Because the guy was not gonna give him the letter. So the offer is 0 at that point in time, right? So the agent put in what he and his client had agreed to. And then that's what the agent goes, I didn't think this through all the way.
Okay,
He shared too much.
lines on the listing where he said to put 0. That would be your way of not digging yourself in the hole. He's using an example.
Okay.
So if you put 0 there and they agree to more on the PA, that's between seller and buyer.
Look, you would agree if I fill out that listing agreement wrong, I could lose my full commission.
Right.
Because I don't know what the buyer's agent, look, if I convince somebody I'm the world's best buyer's agent, I'm gonna negotiate a better deal for you, blah, 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 I'm worth 6%. Right, I could wipe out the whole list. That's why I encourage you to leave zeros in there and let's deal with it if an offer comes in and if we need to do that. Because you would agree, a listing right now might have more than one offer, right? So you have 2 unique offers with 2 maybe discussions with your seller.
But then, so I put 0 there, I understand that, but then I put 2.5 when it says what we're gonna offer buyers.
They're down in the contract. yeah.
Right, so I am protected if I can.
But that agent was not sharing that information with us. And because we're not privy to his listing agreement, when he said, yeah, my seller will pay something, but I'm gonna tell, did he have a pre-agreed amount? Or was it, let's see what happens when an offer comes in? I don't
I
know.
was hoping it comes in at 2, because if
Oh, yeah.
he
So
filled it out back, then he gets paid.
I don't know what he was thinking.
That's the assumption.
Well, it was come through with the,
And in case you didn't know, some agents don't.
yeah, it was just, yeah.
Anyway, so, so our seller has directed us to the listing agreement, what to offer a cooperating broker. We need to let them know that we can't play hide and seek or guess and hope they come in less and they'll make more money. So we must kindly and conveniently provide the written co-op broker agreement. My point to you as a listing agent, do you owe the sellers your best efforts to get the house sold? Yes. Does that mean providing compensation agreements to a buyer and broker? Who need to know that? The answer is yes. Then put it on your phone, get ready to text it out, right? And don't whine about it. It's part of your job. It's a part of your job. Okay, next one. Changes in the PA lines from 405 to 408, seller's contribution. Do not get screwed up on this. Okay. So far, in a few short weeks, we've had agents complete this when there was no need to. If I am offering you compensation and it fulfills your buyer's obligation to make sure you got paid that much, and I gave you the compensation disclosure, this should be blank. And some agents are, well, I just wanted to make sure you're gonna pay me what you'd said you'd pay me. It's like, well, see this compensation between broker agreement, that's the golden ticket there. When you put something in here, right, if I offered 3 and you put 3 in here, it's 3 plus 3, which new math and old math, I think is still 6. Seller just paid net commission. Hopefully you put that into your net sheet as well. So if it's coming, now again, let's say I offered 2 and the agent was entitled to receive 3 from his buyer, then I'm willingly taking your 2, and the seller's gonna pay me another 1, which 2 plus 1 equals the 3, and I have my buyer rep agreement. So do not seller sign a PA where you're giving out that compensation disclosure, unless, let's call it, this is for a shorted commission. Right? You offered 2.7, I got 3 in there, then this should be 0.3. Now, here's what has happened. Because agents don't read. Seller agrees to pay buyers, brokers, compensation at closing blank percent of the selling price. Right? 3% of the selling price. And it says, or, now I know it doesn't say, have like the language in the listing agreement, which says, or more, right? Or whichever is greater, right? So we had 2 where it was $1 million house, and they put in $1 million because they thought it was 3% of the selling price of $1 million. Like in the FHA, clause where you put in the sales price there. So one of the agents came in. Keep in mind, how would you feel if you were the seller and you put your house on the market for, let's just say, $1 million? You got a $1 million offer. You go, awesome. Let's see, what are my expenses? Well, let's say the 7% listing agent commission. That's $70,000. That's okay. And I got $1 million commission too. I'm in the hole. I did sell my house. Now we can all laugh, but we were inches away, and my agents were smart enough to catch that, right? And that's why I say on every offer you get as a listing agent, if you weren't looking at that and figuring out is that an issue, then you ought to have your head examined. But, and we had another one with $210,000 on a $210,000 house. So there is a lot of confusion in the marketplace. It's not going to go away in a week. Think of the agents that do, 1 or 2 or 3 transactions a year. It might be 6 months before they look at this form. They're going to fill it out wrong. So you need to be on your toes as a listing agent to make sure your seller doesn't get caught. And I know agents have gone, well, I know what'll happen. After something happens, I'm going to give you a call and say, hey, Lynn, thanks for getting that purchase agreement signed. I just noticed a little mistake, Lynn. So I'm going to send you over an amendment correcting it. Lynn's going to go, what's that? And I go, well, Lynn, you were really going to get 2 commissions, and I know you can't collect 2, so you were going to give that money back to the buyer, Lynn, and let's just say it's $10,000. So I'm going to send over an amendment that says my seller and I really aren't paying 2 commissions. So call your buyer up and say, it just costs them, they can amend the agreement, but it's gonna cost them 10 grand. I don't think that's gonna happen. I think the buyer's gonna go, a mistake was made. Yes, it's in my favor. Yes, I'm not signing anything. So don't pretend that realtor buddies, you know, hey, we both made a mistake. No, you made the mistake. You let your seller sign that, right? And it'll happen both ways. So don't assume somebody's gonna just sign something when it means money to them.
And I just reviewed one yesterday where there was typo there. I don't know what an ampersand collects for a commission, but that was the only form of commission.
An ampersand. Not a number, is it?
It was a typo. But everyone signed it.
So if you have to counter only one thing in a purchase agreement, and it's this, then counter it. Right? So any questions? This is really important. If that's the only thing you take out of the rest of the meeting, keep that in mind moving forward. Go ahead, next one.
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have an offer currently with, compensation.
Somebody has to do the compensation.
There's somebody, like, I'm the listing agent,
Oh,
so
okay.
they're putting 2.7 in there.
So they, buyer's agent, asking us to sign it. Were you offering 2.7?
I told them that I was offering 3.5. The listing was a 3.5% before the new, before the new.
Okay.
He contacted me, we were talking over the phone, and I told him the commission amount that we're offering. I don't know if he didn't hear that, but when I received the offer, it was just on line 406, 2.7%.
But you gave them the number.
I have not.
Oh, okay, so.
Well, it was on the MLS with the commission when the offer was accepted.
10 days, 12 days.
No, the offer has not yet been accepted.
No, but it was on MLS prior to August 15th.
Yes.
And there was compensation of 3.5 to a buyer broker. So on the 16th, that went away. If he had written an offer on the 15th or 16th, I would have said, he's probably entitled to that, right? But once it disappeared and now it's a week later, there is no offer. So that's where the comp disclosure comes in. So what I'm hearing, and this has happened too, and I'll talk about that, a listing broker and a seller are offering more than the buyer's entitled to receive. Right? Now, that agent might have said, well, Mr. Buyer, they're actually willing to pay me, and let's make it easy, 1% more, they're willing to pay me 3.7 instead of the 2.7 we agreed to. Mr. Buyer, would you like to maybe lower the price? Right, or keep the price the same, but let the seller know he just got a windfall, right? I mean, who's entitled to the, let's call it the extra commission? The listing broker signed an agreement at, let's say 7, agreed to pay 3.5. I would say, Mr. Seller, well, the other broker is only wanting 2.7. I could make the argument that the seller should get that back. And I could make an argument that the listing broker could keep it. Look, I found somebody willing to work for less, but you and I agreed on 7%. So that's, I would, as an agent, I would give that enrichment back to my client. Now, keep in mind, and by the way, if you go to builders right now, right? Ask them what the compensation they are offering. Don't walk in and go, hey, I got an agreement with my buyer for 2%. So can we get this deal done? Because they were willing to pay 2.5. It should just cost your buyer 0.5%. So, I mean, when they quoted you a $500,000 construction price and they had, let's say, 2.5 in there, right? And now I walk in and say, well, I'm only entitled to 2. Shouldn't my buyer have been smart enough to negotiate that extra 0.5% to go to my buyer?
My question really is, at the 2.7 right now, do I need to have my brokerage generate a brokerage compensation and turn it to them?
If you were me, I would tell them, I'm taking commission out of the PA, gonna get you the compensation form. And you said 2.7, so I'll send it at that.
Okay.
And then I'd have a discussion with my seller. I believe I just enriched you. Thanks for selecting me. I just think 2.8%.
Because in the PA though, it'd be easier for her to amend the listing contract than to go in and amend the purchase agreement.
I think you would probably end up doing both, but look, if another agent wants to get paid less than what I'm offering, I'm happy with that, because again, I think I should return that to my seller. Mr. Seller, thank you for selecting me. I am actually putting more money in your pocket. But you're gonna have to amend, and remember, you're only gonna amend it for this one transaction. I don't wanna amend my listing contract, because if this deal falls apart and put the house back on the market, I don't wanna go back to my seller and say, well, let's, so it would be a one time, if John and Mary Smith are the buyers of the home and it closes, the listing commission shall be adjusted from this to this, the co-op broker payout shall be adjusted from this to this. Why don't we see, let's run through this stuff and then we'll keep going. Emmy started nagging it. Yeah, we covered this before. Don't remember to count all the money. Changes in the buyer rep form, broker may not receive compensation. You guys have get these slides, right? Yeah, so you got the slides, so you don't have to take pictures. But you can't receive more compensation than what you negotiated for. So if I have a buyer rep agreement at 2.8%, I'm not entitled to any more. There's a bonus on the house, I will get it. Now, can I go to my buyer and say, hey, Isaac, on this particular house, actually offering a bonus. So, how would you like that return? Now, I think, well, I'll buy it. Be with that, all right? Great. You can buy my side card. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Very well, split. So I'll amend my buyer rep contract to say, Isaac buys house 1234 Main Street. There's a bonus of $5,000. That said bonus is split between the buyer broker and the buyer, or whatever. Or Isaac's gonna reduce his offer price by $5,000 or whatever. Or Isaac can say, Greg, you're the awesomest agent I ever met. You get to keep the old deal. Again, a one-time agreement to raise my compensation for this property, because if this deal falls apart, he doesn't want to be obligated to make me $5,000 more if I sell the house down the street. Next one. Don't negotiate the commission noted in the PA with the other agent. Seller doesn't like it, counter it. I told you my agent cost himself money and really cost his buyer money by doing this. I don't believe there was any need to do so. So the seller can counter, make him formally counter. You like my offer? Yeah. You don't like the commission? Yeah, the counter. Then I get to you got to my buyer and go, look, seller loves your offer. You and I have an agreement 3%. They're only willing to say 2.5%. Either A, I'm going to waive that for you, or B, how are you going to write a check to my broker? Next one. If I don't comply, under the law, once the settlement is finally approved, anyone covered by the agreement is required to abide by it, says catch fund. That's the attorney we all love out of Missouri, by the way. If we believe as class counsel that somebody is not abiding by the agreement, we could take appropriate steps. There was an article in Inman, and he says, every move you make, we'll be watching. Believe it. They have subpoena power. The DOJ has subpoena power, which means they can subpoena the MLS, all the activity that you have had on the MLS to last 6 months, 6 years, whatever. They can go into showing time and see all the contracts you've written or not written. That agreement with that buyer that you really started showing houses to on August 15th, but wasn't signed until September 1st. Bingo. So keep in mind that there is, right now, there's roughly $1 billion settlement, and the attorneys are going to get about 40%. This stuff, they're going to get 100% of the fines moving forward. I think I would rather have this amount than 40% of $1 billion, because this could go on for the next 8 years, finding agents here or there. So our brokerage, your brokerage, is going to comply with all of the terms. MLS will be the enforcer. Here's what will happen. I will go show a buyer property without having any kind of agreement. Buyer rep agreement, facilitator agreement, or the full touring agreement, which I don't like. Okay? So what will happen is I'll meet a buyer, and because they're a friend of mine, or just, I'm not going to make them sign anything. Not even maybe not. Okay? I'm going to show them 3 houses, and they're not going to like it. So next week they're going to call Isaac instead. And they go, Isaac, I would look at homes, and Isaac said, well, you got to sign these forms. This is, well, the guy we were working with last week for Cartos didn't make us sign anything. Now, do you think Isaac, as real estate agent, should like when another real estate agent is still complying with the law? So what do you think Isaac might just do? Anonymous. Call up the MLS. Hey, Mr. MLS, I heard that Greg Cartos last week was showing properties in Maple Grove to a buyer without. And so the MLS, who does not want to be an enforcement agent, but has to be under the lawsuit, says, let's go to showing time. Greg Hartl, yes, he did show 3 properties in Maple Grove. Wonder if there's any validity to Isaac's claim. So MLS is gonna say, hey, Greg, please send over whatever written agreement you had with the buyer, prior to these 3 Maple Grove homes, and I go, didn't have one. MLS says, for that mission, that great, here's your fine. Marketplaces, the fines are starting at $2,500. Right? And I said, well, I don't have one, and so they fine me. Now, I write a check and I pay, because otherwise I won't get MLS access, right? So I do the smart thing and I write a check to MLS. And then MLS puts that name where? In a little list someplace. And maybe every 3 months, maybe every 6 months, the law firm calls up MLS and says, hey, do you have a list of any violators? And the MLS says, certainly do. And the attorneys say, are you gonna make us subpoena that? And the MLS hopefully says, yes, we are, and we will gladly comply with it. So the MLS will send over a list of the 100 agents that have violated the terms of the agreement, and then the attorneys are gonna write me a little letter. Greg, 6 months ago, you showed 3 properties in Maple Grove to a buyer. Please send a check for $5,000 or $10,000. And then I'm on a list. So that's how it's gonna be handled. He will turn me in. Should I feel mad at him for turning me in? No, you should all be happy that Isaac took a minute to do that. So that's how that's gonna work. So MLS, the fine will be to the agent, not to the brokerage. So if you decide to change companies, it's gonna follow that. Individual agent enforcement actions, including the DOC, by the way, they're excited about this, so income producer to them, and licensing action and or a possible lawsuit by these attorneys. And you do not want to go hire an attorney to defend you in this. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. What does it mean to be working with buyer? This is controversial, and it is in the NAR settlement. It is in a couple of articles. It's on the NAR website. You would agree if I just talk to a buyer about buying a house, I am not working with them, right? Hey, Greg, you ever think about buying a house? Yes, but I don't know what to do. Greg, let's have a buyer consult. I'm not working with them yet. I'm educating them. Don't need an agreement. Now, you better give them agency, right? Minnesota, they don't need a written agreement beyond that. Okay? The settlement says, if I'm negotiating on a PA for somebody, do I need a written agreement? The answer is yeah. I can't buy a rep, a facilitator. I can't use a touring agreement because I'm now negotiating PA. So I need one of those two. Well, what about showing homes? Well, that sounds to me like, again, unless they're coming through an open house or our listing, sounds like I'm working with a buyer. I better have a written agreement. Okay, this says, identifying potential homes is working with the buyer. So would you agree if you sent me an email that said, hey, Greg, based upon what you told me about your needs, here are 3 homes that I think would fit your needs. Would you agree that's identifying property for a buyer? Would you agree if I just went to your website and was fishing around and looking at homes, you might not even know that, right? Now, what about I talk to you and you say, Greg, can I send out the search for you? And I said, sounds great. And you say, what do you want? I said, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, $300,000, Roseville. And you go, super, I'll put that into my system and you'll start getting some listings. Would you agree that that is identifying homes for a buyer? So people go, well, if they're I'm sending automatic emails, do I need an agreement? And it's like, according to this, it says yes. Settlement says yes. I am trying to get better definition to that. Right now, keep in mind, I might be sending seller homes in this neighborhood, right? Seller, here's the competition. You know, we're thinking about listing your house in 6 months. Here's some competition. Here's what other homes. I would argue he's not a buyer, he's a seller. I don't need a written agreement with him to send him listings. But the fine teeth of the law in multiple places in the settlement says, identifying homes and sending to a buyer is working with buyer, you need an agreement. So I know people don't like to hear that. I'm trying to get better definition to that. That's what it says. If you're showing your own list, if you're having an open house on your own listing, you're working for the seller, right? You got an agreement with the seller. I'm not working with the buyer. So that a buyer walks in the door, right? Ask them to sign in, get all their information, give them agency if we're starting to discuss the house. if they start specifically saying, well, can I, if I were to write an offer, blah, 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 I'm still working for the seller. I'm not putting them under a buyer rep agreement at that point in time, right? Also showing our own listings, right? You've got a friend that's thinking about buying a house. You go, well, there's this, happens to be this gorgeous 2-story, 4-bedroom that you've been thinking about. Because it's our own firm's listing, should get that buyer agency. And they're your friend and you know other real deal. You're not putting them under buyer rep agreement. You could show them that house. Just like if you got a lead and maybe the lead, you go, well, Greg's got the perfect listing for that. I'd like to show Greg because we're in the same firm, if you were in the same firm or not. But if we were, you could show that without having a buyer rep agreement. Now, I know MLS just sent something out a week ago that said if you show your own listings, it is hard. I disagree with that. Minnesota law. Until, if I thought I'm going to put her under a dual agency, then I think at some point in time I do have to have the written agreement. But if I'm just meeting her there and maybe a day from now, starts going, Greg, could you help me? Could you represent me? And I go, I don't want to do a dual agency, but if I do, then I need to get her under an agreement. Question?
So when you say my listing, I do an open house on my listing, any listing in the.
Anyone gets brokerage. Yeah. We all represent the seller the minute Lynn took a listing, right? Dual agents work with buyer and need an agreement, right? So if I work with buyer before I even decide to show your listing, I got to have that written agreement. Next one.
Virtual showing is a showing.
Virtual showing is a showing. Look, they can go look at the 50 pictures on NLS. The agent's got a virtual tour. They can look at it. But if they say, Greg, can you drive to the house, kind of walk us through? That's a virtual showing. So whether they're with me or not, got to have a written agreement.
So, I don't know if it's gonna fly anymore, but I literally have 2 or 3 people that get listings, they're on my MLS.
Yep.
They've been getting these listings forever.
So they're really not a buyer, they're a looker, but yeah.
Well, they're people look.
Yeah, I get it.
But the thing is, do I need to now go back and they've been getting these listings now for
I can
a
only,
year or two?
that's why I'm looking for a better definition, because I think it's unfair. Thanks, Sam. A home means a residential property. You're working with a commercial guy, you don't need any. Okay? And again, you're gonna get these slides. Next one, open houses. Sorry, I know you were taking pictures, but that's okay. If an MLS participant holds an open house, remember, we don't hold other brokers' listings open. And other brokers don't hold our listings, right? So when it's our listing, our firm's listing, you're there to represent the seller. And you can invite people in. I'm gonna tell you, register everybody. If they won't register, if you won't sign in, then I'm sorry, you can't see the house. I'm the guardian of the house, so they're expecting me to get everybody to sign in, need your name, phone number, email address, whatever else. Are you working with another agent? So, but if they don't give me everything, because I'm worried somebody's gonna use you and call somebody else. If you're procuring costs, I want you to get paid. So if they won't sign in, they don't get it. Not polite about it. You won't need to be required to have enough unrepresented buyer under contract. Okay, next one. Seller only agents are written agreements required when listing agents talk with the buyer on behalf of the seller. No, unrepresented seller. We just talked about all this stuff. We can move on. Working with buyers, written agreements required when MLS agents perform ministerial acts. Then, okay, you would agree just talking to a buyer about buying a house is not an active real estate act. You're trying to get them to become an active buyer. So once you start doing it, showing homes, providing and directing, listening to them, negotiating offers, right? Then you need those written agreements. So talk about that. Go ahead. Facilitator, remember a facilitator agreement is a form of representation, but once you're showing, if you've got somebody under a facilitator contract and you show one of our listings, you're a seller's agent, right? Your facilitator hat gets thrown in the backyard, gets your buyer says, Steve, I'm no longer a facilitator, I represent the seller while we're looking at the house. Move on. Written agreements, are written agreements in a dual agency? Yes, in Minnesota. Keep moving on. Agreements required of MLS participants. I think you've noticed that on showing time when you go to show a property, it asks you to confirm you've got an agreement with the buyer, right? Doesn't ask you to upload it. It's not required. A broker can't They could ask you, hey, can I see your buyer rep agreement, the facilitator agreement? You're not obligated to provide that. Next one. Written agreements in the buyer agreement, can buyers and brokers agree to a range of compensation? No, it has to be a number. It can't say whatever the builder offers or whatever the listing broker offers. It has to be a number or a dollar amount. Like compensation is 3% or $8,000. Those are numbers, right? A range is not a number. Go to the next one. The term of agreement, one property, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever it might be. Services to be provided, fees have to be specified. The broker cannot pay more than what you have contracted for. So if you happen to get lucky, you got a 3% buyer rep agreement, and we somehow get 3.5%, we will not be able to pay you the extra 0.5%. It will go back to the buyer. You would be breaking the law by accepting more than what you contracted for. We would be breaking the law by, in theory, the commission comes here first. It's our money to begin with. So if your agreement's only 3, we can't take more than 3. So it'll never get to the conversation of why don't you pay me the rest? I wouldn't accept it to begin with. So it'll go to the buyer.
We had it happen, and I had Rachel send it back to the title company. What would you prefer?
I would say we need, I'm assuming it's our buyer, Mr. Buyer, congratulations, we got too much. We got more than we contracted for, here's a check. I'd rather it come from us than the title company. I mean, is the title company gonna start asking for copies of our contracts? They might. We have to provide them. I would argue we don't. But we're not gonna pay you more than you can collect. Next one. Buyer contracts that were written prior to August 1st. If you have a buyer contract written prior to August 1st, and you have a range in there as opposed to a number, you need a new buyer rep agreement. So if you're, go look at your old buyer rep agreements, and if it says 3% or 2.5, you're fine. If it says 2 to 3, you need to rewrite it. Put the dollar amount. Next one. Listing contract prior to August 1st. Okay, do I need a new one? The answer is yes. If it's not pending, you need a new listing contract with that same seller. So Mr. Seller, as a result of the settlement and contractual terms changes with Minnesota, I need you to sign a new listing contract. Now, my guess is the seller would probably be okay if you took that original contract and mimicked the same days, right? It's going to run from June 1st to December 31st. Don't try to extend it to 6 months from today, right? Put those same, you know, the start date is today, but the end date is still at 12/31 that we had previously agreed on. And then have a discussion with them about commissions again and splits. So you will need to have new listing contracts if it was signed prior to August 1st and just replace it. Do not cancel the old one, because then we'd probably cancel MLS and then put on a new listing. Just call it a replacement contract. Contract terms to the seller. Next one, seller concessions. Seller concessions, the seller can publicize on MLS. Seller agrees to provide $8,000 worth of concessions to the buyer. Now, some people would say, why would my seller announce that? Right? Because what seller says, well, look, I look forward to paying a buyer's buy-down costs. I look forward to paying a buyer's closing. I think most sellers are no. We'll see what the offer comes in at. So, but if your sellers want to offer compensation to a buyer broker, this is one way to indicate. Without the compensation disclosure, seller agrees to pay 3% of concession to the buyer. We can't call it commissions. We can't say it's only for commissions, but we can't advertise it as MLS. Next one. That's just the attorney again saying how they're going to enforce the actions moving forward. And then the last one. And by the way, this guy apparently doesn't like Zillow. He thinks part of this lawsuit is to kill Zillow, and I think we're all in favor of that. Because he claimed that this lawsuit was spurred by the fact that let's call it out of market brokers were creating a business to build a referral basis, right? They steal our leads back to us. So I'd love to see Zillow get public punished like he claimed it in this article. But I think that's the last slide, right? Well, if you have any questions, I know I'm over. I'm going to sit in the back room, but Andy's got to move on, right? Thanks for coming. Thanks.
We got our next question, so real quick,